Board. Awesome, thank you. Welcome everybody. Tonight is going to be the pre-work preview and question and answer session for applicants for the May and June classes with Code the Dream. So we're going to cover some information. Oh, first, my name is Mary Alice Moore. I'm the class coordinator. You've probably seen me in the live Q&A sessions that we had if you've attended those earlier. If you haven't, then hi. I'm the gal with Code the Dream that handles getting people onboarded as far as students working through the applications, answering any questions you have, and just helping you throughout the process of being in our classes. So feel free to email me if you have any questions at any point in time. I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen and give our presentation so that way you can kind of see what the pre-work's all about. We've got a pretty big group today. I know most of you are probably intro applicants primarily. So we're going to cover the intro information first and have a Q&A at the end of that portion. I'll let anybody that's an advanced applicant know when we're starting the intro specific portion. So that way you can kind of tune it out and then pay back attention when we get into the advanced material. But just wanted to let you know we'll do intro first and then advanced there. And we'll have Q&A sessions after both of those sections. So that way we can answer information about the intro stuff and then answer information about the advanced pre-work also. All right, so let me go ahead and share. Everybody see that okay? Nice. Okay. All right. So pre-work assignments. The pre-work assignments are a required portion of the application process. It is required of all applicants. If an applicant does not turn in a pre-work assignment, then they will not be accepted into a class. We really need to see what your efforts are towards this pre-work assignment. And the purpose of it is really twofold. So for our organization, it gives us a chance to be able to assess applicants to determine if they're capable of the type and the quantity of work that's expected of students. So each week of class is about 15 to 20 hours worth of work. And it's in the same kind of format where you'll have lesson materials to read and review or a video tutorial to read and code alongside with. And then you'll have a coding assignment that you'll do each week. So the pre-work is really kind of a preview of what each week's worth of classwork is like. And so that's the other aspect of the pre-work assignment, is so that applicants can kind of get an idea of, okay, this is how much of a commitment it'll be each week for the duration of the course. Again, it's about 15 to 20 hours worth of work each week. The majority of your time is going to be spent covering lesson materials and, you know, reading or watching or working with concepts of whatever it is that you're learning to build. And then you'll have a coding assignment where you actually kind of test out those skills. So in case you missed the live Q&As that we had previously, our applications closed on April 10th. All of the applicants were emailed the pre-work instructions that we'll be previewing tonight on Monday the 11th, this past Monday. So if you didn't receive it, then please check your spam or your trash folders and or email me to let me know, hey, I never got the instructions. But the preview that we're doing here will also show you how to be able to get to that information for what the pre-work instructions are. Let me go ahead and move on to the next one. So the pre-work assignments are different if you're applying for an intro level class or if you're applying for one of the advanced classes. And our advanced classes for this application period are React.js and Node.js Express. We do also offer a Ruby on Rails class, but our next one won't be until October. But regardless, whether you're applying for a React, Node.js Express, or Ruby on Rails class with us, the advanced pre-work is the same. So you don't do something different if you're a React applicant versus a Node applicant, for example. The Intro to Programming pre-work assignment is a JavaScript drawing or animation. It's only using vanilla JavaScript language, so you don't have to do any kind of fancy skills or anything at this point. And you're provided with a tutorial on everything that you need in order to make a working drawing and animation in JavaScript. And we'll dig into all those details later throughout the preview. For the advanced pre-work assignment, then it is a static website that uses an open source API. So you'll use HTML, CSS, JavaScript basics, API fetch to be able to retrieve that data from the open source API. You do not have a tutorial provided that you have to work through the way intro students do for how to build it. But you do have a list of resources that you can turn to if you need help with JavaScript, with API fetch, with GitHub, anything, any of the tools that you need to be able to build it. Then we have resource links available in your pre-work instructions to be able to help you with that. All right, as I had said, all pre-work, sorry, I don't think I said it yet, actually. All pre-work assignments need to be completed and submitted by the end of the day on Sunday, April 24th. So you have 2 weeks to be able to complete it. And again, it gives you an idea of what 1 week's worth of classwork will look like for you. If we don't receive your pre-work submission by the 24th, or for those of you that might be in Western time zones, you know, like what, 3 a.m. on Monday, that kind of a thing, then we will not have received your pre-work submission, and so you will not be able to be offered a seat in the class. So I just wanted to cover that information to get us started. Okay, so where do I find my pre-work assignment? In the links that were emailed to you on Monday. If you applied only for intro, that was your only interest, then we would have sent you the link directly to the introductory pre-work, which you're seeing in this video here. The intro to programming pre-work assignment here. So you'll have a link directly to those instructions. If you were applying for intro and or an advanced class, or you were just applying directly into advanced classes, then we gave you all of the links. This main link, which goes directly to the main pre-work page, which you're seeing here in the preview, as well as links to the intro or the advanced. So the main landing page for your intro to programming instructions is going to look like this, with sort of that greenish purple background at the top. The address for it is codethedream.org/2020-web-development-prework. For the advanced class pre-work, then it's pre-work for advanced classes. This is what the landing page looks like for that. No fancy colored background or anything, just very basic and simple. So if you're seeing these pages and you're applying for either intro or you're applying for advanced, you're in the right spot. If you don't have those links, then go ahead and jot them down now to bookmark them, or I can also put them up in the chat for you really quick, so that way you have them. codethedream.org/pre-work. Right? Was that what we did? Hold on, I just want to double check and make sure. Yeah, /pre-work. I want to make sure I have the right address in there for you. Okay. All right. So what are all the parts of the pre-work? There are 3 main parts that make up your pre-work assignment. Be sure to read the instructions on those pages, on the page for the pre-work assignment you're doing, either intro or advanced. And it's broken into 3 parts: preparation, and then either tutorial or resources, depending on if you're doing intro or advanced work, and then demonstration. The preparation part is just 2 videos to watch and 2 articles to read. And then we also have some prompt questions following those that you need to answer in the pre-work submission form that you fill out once all of your work is complete. Part 2 for tutorial and resources. If you're doing the intro to programming pre-work, then it's a Khan Academy tutorial on intro to programming using JavaScript to be able to draw and animate. And then the advanced pre-work, you can check out the development documentation for the open source API that you'll be using to build your project, and or if you need any assistance with like GitHub usage or JavaScript or API fetch, then we have resources available there. And then the part 3 demonstration part, that's the fun part. That's where you get to write some code. So the intro to programming, you're going to create a free Code Sandbox account, write your code in a file there. And again, it's all just JavaScript that you're writing. And then for the advanced classes, if you don't already have a GitHub account, you'll create a free GitHub account and just create a repository for your work and build your files. And again, we'll dive into all of this in more in depth in just a few minutes. The bulk of the time that you'll be spending on your pre-work is going to be on parts 2 and 3. So for intro, going through the tutorial and then building your code, or researching whatever you might need, planning how you're going to build, and then actually building your open source API for the advanced classes. So expect it to take about 15 to 20 hours. Some people it's a little bit longer, some people it's a little bit less. It kind of depends on your experience level and how well you're able to absorb all of the information in the tutorial or whatnot. Just plan your time accordingly, break it up into little pieces over the next week and a half, 2 weeks, so that way you can get everything covered when you need to. Excuse me. And then once everything's done, then just submit your pre-work assignment using the assessment form. You can either use that tiny.cc/ctd pre-work link, or it's also listed as assessment form on basically every web page that we have about the pre-work instructions. So it should be pretty easy to get to. All right, so let's start taking a look at the preparation part. This portion, that part one, the preparation portion, is the same regardless of what class you're applying for, whether it's the intro or the advanced. So let's take a look at that real quick and see what that looks like. So here was our main site with the intro to programming class pre-work or advanced classes pre-work. If you click on here, it just comes up with a little informational bubble, and then you click to be able to get to the actual link with the instructions. As you can see, the assessment form link is there for whenever you're ready to submit. But so this is the intro to programming pre-work page. And as you can see, part one is made up of an intro video, mindset, careers in web development, and GitHub. The advanced pre-work instruction page also has the exact same things: the intro to video, the mindset, careers in web development, and the GitHub portion. So what you'll do for the preparation part is you'll watch this short little 3-minute intro video that just gives you an idea of what it's like being in our classes. And then the mindset portion, you'll go to this link here, which will take you to this article at the Marginalian. And so you'll read through the article. It takes maybe about 10 or 15 minutes to read over the whole article. So just read through. It's sort of a pop psychology interesting if you're ever curious about like people's motivations about learning. It's kind of a neat read, so I think you'll enjoy it. And then as you can see, after you read that article, then there are two questions that you'll need to answer. When you go to submit your final project, this is what the submission form looks like. And you'll see this is where those questions are about that first article. What is the value of having a growth mindset? How would a person with growth mindset respond? So those same questions that are here are on your form. It'll probably be easiest if you have like a Word doc or a Google Doc or a Notepad file or something where you type up your answers, and that way you can just copy and paste your answers into the form when you're ready to submit your work. So that covers the mindset portion. The next section of preparation is talking about careers in web development. So this also is an article. When you click the link, it takes you here to the Odin project. And this article really just kind of helps define what developers do as far as if you're front end versus back end, what those terms mean, what kind of technologies you'll use. This maybe takes about 10 minutes to read. And it does have some included links within the article. So if you feel like digging deeper, you can. But the article itself gives you a pretty good outline of the different kind of jobs and positions there are in the tech industry within web development. So after you read through that article, then you'll answer this question. Again, you might want to keep it like on a Word doc or a Google Doc, and then you'll copy and paste that answer into the submission form when you're ready. And then the last one is a short video about GitHub. You won't work with GitHub in the intro class until you're about 5 or 6 weeks in. For the advanced applicants, you'll be working with it from the get-go, and you'll be working with it when you do your pre-work assignment. But this is just sort of a general informational video to get you familiar with it if you aren't already. And then you'll just answer, what is GitHub? So everybody, regardless of what class you're applying for, will have those 4 questions, the ones that are bold-faced in the instructions. And everybody, regardless of what class you're applying for, will need to watch the introductory video, read the article about mindset, read the article about web development jobs, and then watch the short video on GitHub. So that's the only part that's the same for both groups. And you'll want to, handle that accordingly to be able to take care of that information. All in all, that should maybe take about half an hour to go through just the preparation part.
Mary,
Okay.
there is a question on the chat.
Oh,
It
sure.
says, how long do our responses have to be?
Oh, that's a great question. So they don't have to be terribly huge. Maybe about a paragraph should be sufficient to be able to answer. So, 3 or 4 sentences. If you feel like sharing more about what your understanding is or what thoughts you had while reading those articles, feel free to. But we just want to be able to get a gist from your answers that you looked over that material and that you understand what it was talking about. Good question. All right, so for this portion, we're going to cover just the intro pre-work. So if you're applying for an advanced class only and you feel pretty confident that you'll be able to handle the pre-work and not need to drop back to doing the intro pre-work, then feel free to kind of zone out for a little bit, and then I'll get your attention when we're covering advanced stuff. But for the majority of you, you'll probably be wanting to know what the intro pre-work is. So let's go ahead and dive into that preview.
Excuse me, I have a question.
Yeah.
If I check both boxes, because I didn't know which class would be open.
Yeah.
And the intro and the advance,
Mhm.
can I go directly to the advance?
Excuse me. Yes. Yeah. You'll want to do the advanced pre-work in order to be
Okay.
considered for the advanced class.
Okay,
Yeah.
because I know the basics. So.
Exactly. Yep. That's perfect. Thanks, Kimberly.
Okay. Thank you.
Mhm. Okay, so let's take a closer look at the tutorial for the intro portion. You're going to work through a Khan Academy tutorial, and I'll show you what that site looks like and how to get to it from your pre-work instructions. As you're working through the tutorial, you'll want to go ahead and make yourself notes. If there are things that you don't understand, kind of note what those questions are and either research those questions, or if you have friends that are in development, ask them, reach out to any kind of public forums online about, what does this mean or anything like that. There's a lot of resources out there. Since the tech industry is tech-based, then there's a lot of things out there on the web that you can touch on to be able to get those questions answered. The biggest part is going to be planning your time. So the Khan Academy tutorials broken up into 18 lessons. Throughout those 18 lessons, there are 40 talk-throughs, which are short little videos where they've got an audio file talking over the video, so you can see what they're doing and they explain verbally what they're doing as it goes through it. And then 35 challenges where they'll basically just have you do what they just showed you in the talk through. And then 9 projects where you're going to be kind of compiling the information from some of the challenges to make a little mini project. You don't turn in anything for the Khan Academy tutorial, and you'll see what that looks like when we get to the demonstration part. But the Khan Academy tutorial is just for your benefit to be able to work through, to be able to learn what you need to learn in order to be able to create the code sample that is required for the pre-work submission. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at what that looks like. So from the Intro to Programming pre-work site, when you scroll down here to part 2, the tutorial, it gives you an idea of about how long it'll take. And it just gives you a brief summary of what all is covered in the tutorial. This orange link here is the one that you'll want to click to be able to get redirected to the Khan Academy tutorial. So when you click that link, it'll take you here. You don't need to sign up for a Khan Academy account, but the accounts are free. And if you do sign up for a Khan Academy account, then it helps kind of track your progress. So if you need to step away from it for a day and then come back, then it'll save your place as far as what video or what part you left off at. So this is the main dashboard then for the Intro to JS drawing and animation tutorial that we want you to work through. Here's the lessons tab, and it'll show you all of the 18 lessons there. It just gives you the title topic for them. And then in this panel here, it shows you what each lesson is broken down into. So the Intro to Programming lesson, that first one, will have a talk through video that you watch, and then it also just has an article that you can read and that just kind of outlines how to use their product. And then the drawing basics, then it has a talk through of making drawings with code, a quick tip article to read, and then you see where it's got some challenges in there. So anything with a little play button is going to be a talk through. Anything with a star that says challenge is going to be a challenge where you're going to be writing some code, and they do give you little tips and hints through those challenges. And then they also have the projects where you're kind of combining a lot of the concepts that you learned previously in the tutorial. So let's just take a quick look at what these look like to get an idea. So here is the video that it'll be playing, and it'll have audio that goes over top of it. You do have a breadcrumb menu here. So if you're like, okay, I'm done with this, how do I get back? You can click on the Intro to JS and it takes you back to this main screen to be able to take a look at where you're going next. But you can also just click here to be able to work through, you'll click here to be able to work through your modules to be able to read the articles or listen to the talk throughs, and then you can just click to get into your next lesson too. So that gives you kind of a quick overview of what that looks like. The challenges will give you hints. You write whatever your code is based on what the instructions and the challenges are, and then you just proceed on to the next step. They do have fun little animations that pop up as far as if you're on the right track or if you've accidentally done something by mistake, like if you leave out a semicolon and it says, oh no, something's wrong. So it'll alert you if there's anything going awry with your tutorial process. All right, so that covers the majority of the Khan Academy. I just wanted to make sure everybody kind of got a visual and understood how to be able to navigate around, because there are so many different chapters and moving parts. And there are just a lot of pieces to it. So that covers that portion. And then let's take a look at the demonstration portion. So after you've worked through the Khan Academy tutorial, then you'll have all of the basic knowledge that you need to be able to then build code in a Code Sandbox environment, which will be the link that you submit. So that way we can see that you understood what you absorbed in the tutorial. So you can look back at any of the tutorial information for help. If you built something in Khan Academy tutorial that you really like and you want to create that in Code Sandbox to then submit to us, then that's perfectly fine. You can go back to your tutorial. If you signed in and it saved your work, then you can copy it over to the Code Sandbox. Just be aware, Khan Academy uses something called Processing.js library. And Code Sandbox uses P5.js library. So there may be some things that if you copy and paste from Khan Academy to Code Sandbox that might break when you're in Code Sandbox because it's using a different library that defines what a shape is, for example. So just be aware, if something's broken in Code Sandbox that worked in Khan, then be flexible. Maybe you want to take that element out or find a different way to be able to draw it or build it. You'll only write in the Sketch.js file, and that'll make more sense when you see the visual now of how that works. So after you've worked through your tutorial, you do want to make note of these questions and the answers that you'll provide for these questions when you're working through the tutorial, because these questions are asked right after the first four in the pre-work submission form that you do. So if you're applying for an intro class, then you'll see further down, write an example of how you would declare a variable, define, write a function. So those questions that are in the instructions here are going to be on your form. So just add that to your Word doc file or your Google Doc file to be prepared to copy and paste it. All right, so the demonstration part. You're going to be using Code Sandbox to be able to write your own code and show us what it is that you're building. It's really important that you create a free account and that you file and save your work in Code Sandbox, because it does not auto save. So you're going to need to continually save your work in the project in order for it to be visible and for it to save where you left off in case you have to step away and come back to it. So follow the link here to start your project. When you click on the word here in those instructions, then it'll take you to this page. So this is the primary starting point that you all will see. Notice that it says you can sign up for free to save your work. So you'll go ahead and create Sandbox, sign in, follow the steps to be able to create your account. Again, it's a free account. You don't need to pay anything for it. When you go ahead and create your account, then it will wind up making a copy of all of this information in your own account, so that way you can take a look at it. So here's an example of what it'll look like once you start kind of playing around with it. So you've got files over here. You don't need to touch on any of these files except this Sketch.js file right here with a little yellow JavaScript icon to the left of it. All of these other things that are built in are just tools for us to be able to have this window to display what it is that you're building. These little circles, the red, green, white circles, are default ones that we have put in there just so that way when you get to the page, then you can see, oh, okay, we've got a background that's a solid black background, and then we have, you know, little circles here that are drawn and filled in with particular colors. This portion will not be in your code initially. So it'll look like this to start out with. Follow the instructions that are in these grayed outlines. These are called comments in code, and it's something where there isn't actually any code on that line that's being run. It's just a way for the people who have built the code to notate, this is something that I want the person who's reading my code to know and understand. So it says declare any variables you need here. So you would put any variables in this section. For the setup function, you don't need to change anything with it at all here. We have the canvas set up to being 500 by 500, 500 pixels wide, 500 pixels tall. The draw area is where you'll be inserting your code. So as you can see here, we've got a background and ellipses, the little circles that we're drawing, and then we're calling a function that we created here that also has little circles in it. So you'll want to make changes within the draw function, and you'll want to create a function outside of this draw function to be able to create shapes and then call it within in order to be able to have the code that's in this portion run when it's starting to draw your picture. It might feel a little overwhelming, but I promise when you go through the Khan Academy tutorial, a lot of these terms and how this looks will make more sense, I promise. One thing I wanted to demonstrate real quick about what I was talking about for the difference between Khan Academy and Code Sandbox. So for some of these terms like stroke, stroke weight, no stroke, that's the outline of a shape. And when you put them in, then it affects anything and everything. In Khan Academy, putting those right before you define a shape will affect just that shape. But because of the library that we're using here, using those will affect every shape that you have. So that's one of the differences between their Processing.js library and the P5.js library. So just be aware that if you're not seeing what you're expecting to see after the tutorial, then those are things that you might need to take into account and change accordingly. Okay, so I think that covers the biggest portion of the demonstration. Once you're done writing your code in your Sketch.js file in Code Sandbox, then the address that you'll put into your submission form can either be this address up here, where it's got your username and the way for us to be able to get to your Sketch.js file. Or you can also give us this address here, which will just take us directly to your animation. So if you use the address here that takes us directly to your animation, this is what we'll wind up seeing, but we can also open Sandbox to be able to see your code. So you can use either of those addresses. And then lastly, I just wanted to show you an example of a solid pre-work submission that we had gotten with the last round of applications, just so you can see kind of what it looks like or what a finished product should be. This one does include animation, so it's got the stars falling and the little cars driving by, but you don't need to have animation in your pre-work project. So I just wanted to kind of give you an idea that this is achievable after you do a tutorial, or you can also just have a picture. It doesn't have to move, and that's also acceptable for pre-work. Okay, so let me jump back to our presentation portion here and let's start answering questions. I know several came up in the chat. Let's see here. In case we don't, in the case we feel confident enough to really go all in on the code, is there anywhere where you would not like us to alter the code? So if you are familiar with HTML or CSS, you are welcome to edit those files if you want to. Just make sure that your end product is working the way you want and expect it to. But ideally, the majority of your work should happen in that Sketch.js file because that's the main area that we're going to be looking at for intro applicants to see how you wrote your JavaScript code in that Sketch.js file. So hopefully that answered your question, Hannah, but feel free to pop up another question if it didn't.
Can you demo how to save?
Oh, yes. Yeah, absolutely. That was going to be the very next thing. Okay, so let's say I go ahead and take out these lines of code, and then let me just go ahead and change the color of something. Let's change this one to like 50. Okay, so I've changed a setting here and I hit save. It changed my white circle to a yellow circle. And the way that you save is going to be File and Save. Or you see there's a keyboard shortcut of Control S or Command S if you're on a Mac. So just like you're saving a Word document, Control S will save it, or you can go through the menu to be able to go up to your little 3-line menu bar up there and then File and then Save. If you've made changes to multiple, so Hannah, if you've made changes to multiple files, then you can do Save All to make sure that changes are saved in any of the files that you do. Great question.
Do you want us to keep the canvas size as is?
Ideally, keeping it 500 by 500 is great. If you have a bigger idea for what you want your picture or your animation to be and you need to increase the size, that's okay too. Just keep in mind that browsers do have particular sizes they tend to be. I think mine's 1920 by 1080. So just keep that in mind and don't make anything that's like 3,000 pixels by 3,000 pixels, because then there's going to be a lot of scrolling in every direction to be able to see all of your work. That's a good question.
All right. There is another question. It says, if we are approved and finish the intro course, do you help us get a job in the field after?
Yeah, so that question was covered in the live Q&As, but I'll answer it here too. When you are in the advanced class, at the, after intro, then you'll want to take an advanced class, and you're really more job ready by the end of the advanced class. We don't have any direct assistance that we provide. So we don't have like a pipeline that feeds our graduates into particular companies, but we do have resources that we offer all of our grads as far as information to help you with like your LinkedIn profile, your resume, resources for researching about technical interviews or mock interviews. And then we also do offer networking events and events that can help you kind of further your learning after you've become an alumni and completed our courses with us too. So there's nothing that dumps you directly into a job at the end of the classes, but we do give you plenty of resources to kind of help make that job hunt process easier for you. Let's see here.
Can we send a link for the Q&A?
Yes, yeah, I will be emailing everybody a link for the recording for this session. If I'm okay, good. Yeah, recording of the most recent Q&A. Actually, the most recent live Q&A session is available on our website already at codethedream.org/classes, and it'll be right there at the top of the page for you to be able to take a look at the most recent one that we had back on April 5th. And then I will be sending a recording of this event tonight to all of the applicants, so that way you can access this recording and refer back to any questions that we cover tonight. I'll also probably send just a PDF file of these slides, so that way if you don't want to watch an hour-long video, then you can at least thumb through the slides and get to the information that you need. So hopefully that'll help. Thank you for putting that link up in the chat there, Alex. Okay, and I think that covers, comfortable with Khan Academy, but working in Sandbox is very, very challenging. Thank you for sharing that, Allie. Yeah, there are a lot of moving parts to Code Sandbox. It can be very intimidating for folks who are completely new to coding. So that's why we wanted to do this preview, so that way it kind of helps give you a visual to know, okay, once I'm in Code Sandbox and I create my account, the only thing I really need to mess with is the Sketch.js. This portion is really just showing you your file structure. So whatever's highlighted in this gray is going to be whatever file is open here. So you'll see Sketch.js here and Sketch.js here. That means all of this code is in this file, kind of like if you have your Word documents in a folder on your desktop on your computer. Same kind of idea, that you have these files that work together and they're all housed in one location, but the Sketch.js file is the only one that you really need to touch on to be able to make any changes or write any code. The other thing to remember is just leave your setup as is, unless you want to increase the size of your canvas, as somebody had asked earlier, and then put the majority of your code in Draw. You are asked to create a separate function. So here we've got the 2circles function. That's just a unique function that was created by the person who was writing the code. And you'll see a lot of this code looks similar to a lot of this code. So it's just a way to be able to have a portion of code that runs separate whenever you reference this particular term. So in the draw function, we're filling and drawing one of the circles, and then we create 2 more circles, which are here. So hopefully that makes it a little bit clearer. I know it can be really confusing and intimidating, but that's why we provide the Khan Academy tutorial for y'all to work through first, that hopefully it'll help make this make sense, even though it's probably a little confusing right now. Okay, other questions that we had in here are, do we have to be creative to get through the assignment? No, you don't have to have any creativity. Like here, it's just a couple of circles. If you can sort of put together a stick figure drawing in some way, shape, or form, that's perfectly fine. The main thing is we want to make sure that you're understanding how to use these kind of things correctly, as far as like, okay, I have to have a function here that I'm passing these particular terms in order for it to draw a circle that's 30 pixels down and 30 pixels over, and the circle itself is 30 pixels wide and 30 pixels tall. So we want to just make sure that you're understanding how to use these, that you understand how to write a function and then call that function Those are the primary things. And as you'll see in the instructions here for your demonstration, that those are the main things that we look at when we're assessing your final project, is we want to make sure that you have a conditional statement in there, a loop, and then use of a function. And all of those items are covered in your Khan Academy tutorial. So hopefully that helps answer that question. Let's see what else we've got. Demo copying the link to the sketch, the submission form. Oh, okay, sure. Yeah, absolutely. So let me hop back over here. And we've got our code here. So you can either highlight this and then usually Control C, or I think you can right click and copy. Yeah. So you can use either that, or same thing here where you can, oops, sorry, highlight the whole address, right click, copy. And then when you go to your submission form, down here is where it's asking you to insert the link to your coding project. For people who are applying to Intro to Programming, you'd submit the Code Sandbox link. So then you can just paste right in there. So hopefully that helps answer that portion. Okay, let's see. Once the work is submitted, when will we get notified about the interview? So Intro to Programming students, we don't require an interview, and we don't usually do those. We let your work speak for itself. Interviews are really held more for advanced students, so that way we can be sure that you're solid on your foundational skills before you jump into the work that is involved in the advanced class. For when you'll be notified, all applicants, regardless of whether you're accepted or not accepted, will be will receive an answer on May 9th. And all of that information is also on that link that Alex posted earlier, the codethedream.org/classes site, under important dates, important upcoming dates on that page. That'll give you a breakdown as far as when your assignments due, when you'll be notified whether or not you've been accepted into the class, when the student orientation is, when the class starts. All of those great dates are all there. Let's see here. Yes, yeah, pre-work is basically your technical interview itself. That is correct, Alex. Okay. If you didn't select the advanced class in the application, can you go into the advanced class after you complete the intro class? Yeah, that's exactly our whole process. So we usually accept more students into the intro class, and then you all sort of filter your way into the advanced classes as you move through our programs. So you do not need to apply directly into the advanced class, but if you're coming to us with some coding skills already, then it's worth a look at the advanced class pre-work to see if you want to try and jump right into the advanced class, or if you need to strengthen your skills, or if you're new and need those skills, then take the intro class and then take an advanced class once you've completed the intro class. Let's see here. Would you say that Intro to JavaScript Drawing and Animation tutorial is beginner friendly? Yes. So both the videos with the talk-throughs that they offer and the language that they use in their articles and in their tutorials are really pretty user-friendly. You don't need to know a lot of technical jargon in advance to be able to understand what they're talking about. And they have some helpful tools. I forgot I wanted to show this to you all too. So if being talked at or watching a video doesn't work for you learning style wise, you can always click on transcript here and come on, there we go. And it'll show you what the whole transcript is of that particular video. You can even click on those and it'll jump you to that particular point in the video. So that way you can start following along with it there if that's helpful for anybody. And then for their little projects and challenges, they do also offer documentation at the bottom there. So if you're like, oh, I don't remember what the order was of the things that I needed to define the width and the height and whether, where it shows up within the canvas, then they have in the documentation section all of these little links to take you back to be like, oh yeah, how do I draw an ellipse? Let me click on that. Okay, good. This takes me back to show me how to draw an ellipse. So it's really pretty helpful and user-friendly, and that's why we went with it. Khan Academy is primarily geared more towards younger learners, but it's fun and it's a very handy, easy tutorial, and adults like it too. So that's why we decided to go with that as your tutorial for it. And let's see, other questions. I think that's it. So I don't have any other new questions in the chat. Feel free to pop them up there if you do. If you are only applying to intro, then this covers everything that you need to know for the intro pre-work. So you're welcome to hop off the call now if you'd like to. if you want, you can stick around and see what the advanced stuff is about too, if you're curious. If you think of questions afterwards that you haven't gotten answered, then you can always email me. My email address is maryalice@codethedream.org. I'm putting it up in the chat right now. But hopefully that helps get you started, so that way you can really dive in and have a lot of fun over the next, what, 10 days, 13 days, 12 days from now until the 24th, when you need to turn in your homework or turn in your assignment. But thank you all so much for joining. Have a great night. And then we're going to dive into the advanced stuff next for those of you that have been patiently waiting for us to cover that. I'm going to give just a couple of minutes in case we have folks hopping off. Thanks, everyone. All right. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and dive into the advanced pre-work now. So those of you that are on and listening and are applying directly to the advanced classes, or you're not sure yet if you want to do advanced pre-work and try for that class, or if you want to do the intro, now is when we'll cover what the advanced pre-work looks like and get all of that information going for you. Okay, so the preparation part is going to be the same like we had talked about earlier, as far as those 4 questions about web development roles in GitHub, what is GitHub, and growth mindsets. All of those things are going to be the same as what we had covered with the intro group. And so now let's take a look at resources. You all don't have a tutorial that you'll be working through, but we do offer resources to kind of help guide you in case there are areas that it's been a while since you've worked with that code and you just need kind of a refresher. So as you're going through the advanced instructions, which let me hop back over to those. Let me close off some of these intro ones because we don't need those anymore. Okay. All right. So here is our advanced pre-work instructions, and that's all the preparation that's the same. The part 2 resources section has links to, like, if you're not familiar with GitHub, it has information there. If you've used JavaScript well and you've got a good solid foundation in JavaScript, but you're not familiar with Fetch, then it has information there for API Fetch. So several links there that you can look at to be able to kind of find your way, but no strict tutorial for you to be able to follow at all. So the main part prior to your actual writing code would just be kind of developing your plan and looking over what the documentation is like. So first step, I would recommend taking a look at the development documentation for the open source API we have you using. It's called SWAPI, Star Wars API is why it's called SWAPI. And when you come down here to the instructions, then you'll see Star Wars API here. Sometimes the SWAPI dev one has issues with its server. So if it's down or you're getting any errors in your console or anything, then you can use the swapi.tech instead of swapi.dev. They both reference the same database of source material. So either should work for you. So when you click on that link, it takes you here. This is their main homepage that just kind of says, oh, were you looking for swapi.co or swapi.dev? Then this is sort of the new site for that. And it gives you sort of a demonstration of how their data is set up. I would recommend going to this tab up here first, documentation, and read through this getting started, because it gives you a really good breakdown as far as, like, here's how you do your basic fetch. Here's how you handle what data is returned to you from fetching the information from their site. And then it also kind of gives you a good breakdown as far as did it come through okay? And then, okay, here are the results of what the properties are of a particular world within the Star Wars franchise. I missed that, or sorry, I skipped that step. So the Star Wars franchise, the movies that probably a number of you are familiar with, it's just a series of movies about a fictional story that was created, and it has planets and characters and ships that they use and all kinds of fun things. So this is just a database that has all of that data for you to be able to reference. So I recommend going through the getting started just to kind of get a good understanding of how to use that particular tool. And then the optional next step after you look through the getting started is going to be taking a look at any of those JavaScript and API fetch resources or the GitHub resources that we had in that part 2 of the pre-work instruction page. So if you need to refer to any of those, or if there are other things that you're like, I don't remember how to do that, I want to take a look, then just kind of dig through the internet to find the information that you're looking for. And then the final stop is going to be GitHub. If you don't already have a GitHub account, you'll want to create a free GitHub account. So that way you can create a repository where you're going to hold all of the files that builds the Star Wars site for you. And so additional research on that might be needed based on your experience level, as far as like creating your repo and creating your file structure that will then run. I do have some examples I wanted to show you to get you familiar with GitHub. So github.com is the main page that you'd go to, and they have like a little sign up, sign in option when you go to the main page. I'm already signed in, so it shows my little profile picture. Your main page is going to look like this, and then with whatever avatar or whatever you decide to put in. And then you'll have a repositories tab. It'll be blank to start with, but then you just create new to be able to create your new repository, and it walks you through the steps. I went ahead and created a little fake advanced pre-work example repository just so I could demonstrate tonight. So for most of you, we should be able to just clone the files that you build into your repository here and run them locally to be able to see what your code is like and how it's working. But some of you might choose to publish your site. GitHub does have a pretty cool setting. If you go to your settings within your repository and then go to pages, it gives you an option to be able to publish your page. So I went ahead and went through those steps. It's, maybe takes about 5 or 10 minutes to set up, if that. And once you have your information set up, then it gives you this link. So when you click on your link to display your page, here's my little Hello World page that I had created. And you'll notice when I go back to my code and I look at my HTML file, I just have Hello World in there. So it gives you a way to be able to present your finished product without having to go through a whole deployment process and all of that kind of thing. Let's see, what else did I want to cover with that information? Oh, for your repository. Okay, so the things that are required we have for your assignment, we have information here as far as creating HTML for the page. You'll want to have CSS in use to be able to design your page, use some fonts, use some colors, that kind of a thing. You'll want to be sure that you're including a README file with instructions. So just like I had back here, I had my little README file of information about we might have to run your code differently depending on how you build it. Some of you might build a more complex site using like Bootstrap, or if you already know React and you're applying for the Node class, maybe you build it in React, who knows? So if you have a more complex site that we need to run like npm install, npm start to run your site, then just include that information in your README. If you are doing this portion where you use GitHub to be able to publish your page, you can just put your link in here. So that way we can just click the link and then we'll be able to see the page that you created. Or you can just put, please download the code. But a README file is important in any project. So that way folks know how to be able to get that particular library of code to run properly. And then was there something else I wanted to cover with that? Oh, right. I just wanted to jump back to here. So all you really need is an HTML file, a JS file for your API fetch, and then a CSS file. So those are the main things. This config file gets added in when you go to create that published page through the settings, and a README file are the 4 things that you want: README, index HTML, index JS, index CSS. So those are the basic things that you need to be able to build your site. I did want to show you an example of one that was done. This is just a very simple, straightforward one. You do need to have some kind of navigation. So the home page just populates a particular character. This applicant's planets page lists all the planets, and then you can click on the planet to be able to get the details from it. And you can also, navigate back. Oops, sorry. The home page just gives that one particular character. But basically, we just want to know that you understand how to get that information and how to parse that information out on your site. It doesn't have to be anything particularly overwhelmingly fancy, but in the instructions, then it breaks it down as far as you need to use 2 models. So, a case where it's a person, or lists the characters, a list of the films, a list of the planets, that kind of a thing, for the user to be able to navigate between those models. So it gives a pretty clear breakdown as far as what we're expecting to see. Hopefully that helps give you a good idea. When you're going to submit your final project, you can either submit your IO address here to your published page if you want to. We definitely need this address here though, so that way we can get to your code and look at the actual code that's written. So this is really the primary one that you're going to want to copy and paste into here. And we do have a reminder here that if you're applying for React or Node, submit your GitHub repository link. So I think that covers it. Advanced was a little bit quicker to go through because a lot of you are probably already familiar with the basics. And so hopefully this wasn't a complete mind-blowing moment for you to be able to see what the instructions in the preview is like for the advanced material. Main things are to just consider the amount of time you have to be able to kind of break it up as far as what you want to build when and how much time you think it'll make to build it. It's always better to just have a simple functional site that meets the requirements than to try and make this big, fancy, overwhelming site with a whole lot of data that uses all of the models and turn in something that's broken or incomplete. A reminder, the minimum requirements are HTML file, CSS file, JavaScript file, and a working API fetch are the main things that we're looking for. And then just submit using the TinyCC CTD pre-work, which is also the assessment form link that's found throughout the instructions. All right, question and answer time. So let's see here. Is it possible to give us an example on exactly what you're looking for on part 3 of the pre-work? And that's for the advanced classes that you're asking about, right, Eric? Okay, perfect. Oh, okay, yeah, never mind. All right, good. Yeah. So HTML, CSS, JavaScript file, README file, and you need to have a working API fetch within your JavaScript file. Those are the main things that are like minimum requirements. Your site definitely should have at least those items. Any other questions out there about the advanced material at all? Or about the intro stuff too, if you're one of the folks that's on the fence and you're not sure if you want to do advanced or intro or anything along those lines.
A question for you.
Yeah.
You said that it's going to be like 30 hours a week that we do this, right?
So actually for the pre-work, it should be 15 to 20 hours over the next 2 weeks for you to be able to do the pre-work assignment. And then when you're in the class, each class week will be about 15 to 20 hours worth of work. And it's split up. So 2 of the 15 to 20 hours is going to be in mentor sessions where you're meeting live with a mentor to be able to get your questions answered about the lesson material, or if you run into issues with getting your code to work, then you can kind of work through those with them live on that call. But the bulk of it is going to be covering your lesson materials. So reading through the text, watching tutorials, and then doing your coding assignment for the week. For all of the advanced classes, you build a project throughout the 17 weeks of the course. So you start out very simple. Week 1 for the React class is just create an empty React framework. And then you start adding features to it to build onto it as the weeks progress. For the Node.js class, the same kind of thing. You start out just very basic, building your structure, and then you start adding more information into that data structure. You start building tests for the data, all of that kind of stuff. Does that answer your question, Kimberly? Do you have any other questions?
Yes. And is the
Okay.
class a particular time, or is it going to be at our own pace?
Great question. So the learning materials that you cover are at your own pace. And then the mentor sessions, those live sessions that you attend, it's varied hours throughout the week and weekend. Most of our mentors do weekday evenings, and then you usually have a couple of weekend sessions. And we publish the schedule for that lessons week on Mondays. So Monday we'll pop you with here's the link to be able to take a look at whose sessions are when this week, and you just sign up for whatever ones work best for your schedule. So if you need a set, like, oh, there's a session that's Tuesdays at 8 p.m. that works perfect for me, you can just always sign up for your Tuesdays at 8 p.m. every time we publish the new week schedule. If you have a varied work schedule, sometimes they have you on nights, sometimes they have you on days, then you can just take a look at the schedule for that week and sign up for the sessions that work best for you.
Okay.
So what exactly are we learning in React? Eric had asked. That's a good question. It covers a lot. It covers all of the fundamentals. So you're going to be covering use of state, hooks, components, both class and functional components, I believe, are covered in the curriculum. It covers everything with building a React app up to, but not including deployment. And the reason being, we just don't have a good way structured yet for you to be able to deploy it without exposing API keys, which is, private private information that you don't want to have just floating out there on the internet. So you'll do everything up to, but not including deployment for building an entire React app. The project in the React class is building a to-do list app. So it's just a very simple, straightforward application where it'll be a field that you can enter in your to-do list items and add them to your to-do list. And then you can edit them, you can mark them done, you can delete them. That kind of functionality is what sort of the finished product winds up looking like. I can't remember for sure if if Redux is covered or not, but I will look that up and get back to you about that information, Eric. What percentage of people come into the program without knowing what career to choose in tech? That is a great question, Preeti. It really varies. For the intro level classes, I'd say probably 80 or 90% of our students aren't really sure what they want to do. They just know that they do want to be in tech and they do want to write code. And then from there, they're not usually quite sure where they want to go. For our advanced students, if you're coming in as a new applicant into an advanced student, I feel like most of them have a pretty good idea of like, oh, I want to learn React, I want to learn front end, because I like things that are more user facing. I like to be able to design the page or the application that the end user interacts with. Versus if you like to build the data structures that the front end uses to be able to present to the user. So it really varies. Usually the advanced applicants know a little bit better which route they want to go. But there's also a lot of flexibility and fluidity in the tech industry. We have a volunteer that's been in program development and engineering for like 30 years, and he started out learning one and he's learned new technologies ever since. And so being in the tech field, you're kind of just a perpetual learner because technology changes. They come out with new libraries, new features, new frameworks. So you have more flexibility. If you've been working as front end for 5 years and you're like, I'm sick of this, I want to go play with data, then you can pretty easily educate yourself on back end to be able to make that transition, and vice versa too. Hopefully that helped answer your question, Preeti. Any other questions out there? All right, well, that covers our presentation tonight. I'm still going to stick around, so if anybody does have any other lingering questions, then they can ask. But if you have questions you think of after the fact and need to reach me, I've popped up my email address a couple of times in the chat, but it's maryalice@codethedream.org, and you can just fire off an email to me and I should be able to answer you in a pretty timely manner. All right, thanks everybody. Have a great night.
You too.